welcome to All Rise. It's me, your host, Derek Caldwell, with Abdu Murray, author and speaker. And Abdu, today, I don't know if you've heard, it's been in the news. Christianity's false. The world is ending again. And this time, it's because of aliens.
Yes, I have heard.
There's been, the Trump presidency or administration is releasing all these UFO files. And apparently at the same time, there was this meeting with a bunch of pastors and a top government official. Almost none of this is what actually happened, but and they were told, beware, you're going to hear some things. It's going to totally up in the faith.
Mm-hmm.
I think I even heard one person say, like, they're not going to take Genesis literally anymore. And it's like, well, okay. We've kind of been talking about that for about 2,000 years, if not more.
It's been a little while.
Anyway, today, to help us navigate through this, we've got our old friend, Scott Symington, medical physicist, and this will be like the pre-launch.
Yeah.
Little hint. Scott is going to be, and actually officially is, and we're working on rolling it out, a speaker for us as well.
That's right.
So that is coming up, and you'll be able to have Scott come speak at your events and churches.
Absolutely. And as excited as I am to talk about the UFO, UAP, end of Christianity, it's all over, pack it up kind of a thing. I'm as excited, if not more excited, to have announced that Scott is a speaker with the ministry as well. He's already been on the show. One time we've spoken about science and faith and the fine-tuning arguments, amongst other things. With Scott, had just a great conversation. So I'm looking forward to today's as well. And hopefully he can restore our faith in the veracity of the Bible from the absolute shakenness that with which it's quivering on the floor and needs to be revived. So Scott, save us. I don't know if that's blasphemous. Maybe I went too far. Anyway,
Scott, the Bible takes care of its own business.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, so speak to us about this. So UFOs, everyone's talking about it. There was this supposed meeting. Almost none of it actually happened the way the media or the Twitter sphere had said it actually happened. But apparently there's aliens among us, and it upends our faith. Or does it? So how should we react to this?
Aliens are everywhere, but are they everywhere in space or just the imagination? Is it science or is it science fiction? There's a point where you got to stop speculating and start analyzing and concluding. And that's where I'd like to help people get more towards. Now, as far as the most recent thing, I was very disappointed to hear some pastors making some stuff up. Trust is very important in a pastor position. So that was the most disturbing of the whole thing. As far as their claims, a friend of mine, a psychiatrist, he's out in Troy, William Guy, he predicted this about 20 years ago. And at the time I was like, what are you talking about? But it was pretty insightful. What happened was I had just given some evidence as far as supporting Christianity, and that the Bible is the only source we have that there's some verifiable evidence that there's a God behind it. And I was telling him, it just seems so strong. I don't see how people are going to get around this. And then we talked about the kind of post-truth culture, and that can kind of fight it a little bit. But he said, what's going to come eventually are aliens. I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, think about it. If you want to deceive, if you want to basically go after the Christian claim and you don't have the scientific evidence, you basically say, okay, that evidence is there, but God is just a super advanced alien bully that we're going to have to resist. And I said, ooh, that would be a good tactic. I mean, if you had another version of Screw Tape Letters, I think that would have been an excellent one, because if you bring in the idea of aliens that way, you can effectively deal with the evidence and then also lead people to resist God instead of, opening their arms.
And it even starts to get to that. I think for me, that whole if there's these other beings out here, then you're not all that special. It's the whole Copernican principle again. Because you're not all that special, then God. So it even questions it that way, which is a lot of times. I know we were talking about the California monk Seraphim Rose
Yes.
earlier, who kind of talked about this and talked about like sci-fi being this like in a lot of not Battlestar Galactica, which you just told me about. But in a lot of sci-fi,
everyone should watch. Yeah.
it's sort of you get out there and you're kind of finding that it's just a lot of beings. Some have special powers, some don't. But there's not really like a god over this. It's kind of I don't know. A lot of times dystopian. A lot of places they're going, there seems to be sort of a purposelessness to it, other than survival.
Right. Well, one of the things I think that's important to start at the outset is why should we be worried about this? Because, the hype, Scott, as they talked about it, was there's this meeting where government people are bringing together pastors so that they can be informed about the classified information that's being disclosed and declassified, so they can prepare their people, meaning the pastors can warn their people that your faith is going to be shaken and upended. So the question then becomes, why would the existence of aliens actually upend the Christian faith, or for that matter, at least give some people pause about whether or not we should take the Bible seriously? There might be a God if there are aliens, but why is the Bible called into question? So that's really the issue, right? I mean, the reason why we're having this episode is, one, to talk about, what did the declassified files actually reveal? And two, so what? Why should anybody care? And does it really, for the skeptic, does it really undermine Christianity? And for the Christian, does it undermine Christianity at all? I can think of some reasons why it might, but what do we think?
So there's a couple reasons that we should care about this whole alien issue. One reason is global investment. We're putting billions of dollars every year into SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. There's a lot of equipment, and we're investing not just resources, but intellectual power. We're putting a lot of things into that. Now, it could have, some people also have their beliefs and hope tied into it. Carl Sagan, he felt humanity had no chance to save itself. So what he was waiting for, and he confided with some people on this, is he wanted the Encyclopedia Galactica. I think Isaac Asimov was probably the first one to mention this, where all these advanced aliens put all their best knowledge together in these encyclopedias, and this will help us learn how to survive this world, and transhumanism and all that stuff. And then finally, if these aliens, if they come out and they're, the idea, if people are getting convinced of aliens, then you can start looking at the evidence that supports Christianity as really just evidence for aliens. And you're already starting to see some of this stuff in the movies. For example, in Ridley Scott's Aliens films, where you have the engineers, they're the ones that seeded life through their DNA that already existed. The Supernatural series, which this is a picture of, you have God was just some author, a bad author, writing into people's lives, and he was kind of just a dictator bully to be resisted. So these are the kind of dangers that could happen. Now, if you have just a good understanding of the Bible and evidence for it, though, none of these should threaten you. Because first of all, we know that you need, because the universe had a beginning, the cause of that universe has to be outside of all of nature. So that's beyond all matter, energy, space, time, before time or any of the universe began. So no aliens fit into that. You need the properties that we found out of the cause of the universe fit precisely what the Bible predicted millennia earlier. So with that in mind, the idea of aliens isn't going to really hurt the Christian evidence unless people are ignorant of it. Then they'll buy into what the movies are showing them, and then it becomes a problem.
Well, one of the things that I think that people will think through in terms of like, oh, is this a problem? Is this something we should worry about with regard to not theism generally, but Christian theism specifically, is if there are aliens, the Bible never mentions them. And you'd think that if God had created other beings somewhere else, the Bible would have mentioned them. And then people say, well, maybe they did. Maybe the the sons of God who knew the daughters of men, and created the Nephilim and all this. Maybe that's exactly what this is, which of course isn't super explicit about it because it doesn't say other worlds. It doesn't mention all that. So there's attempts to explain the biblical data by saying if we encounter aliens, there could be explanations within the biblical record like that. And I worry a little bit that that's going to take the text further than it allows, only because we have to fit it into sort of a newspaper theology.
I agree.
Yeah, but there's also the question about, before we get into the evidence about whether or not there are in fact aliens or not, and what these sightings could actually be. One of the worries is theological, is that if Christ died for humanity as our representative, which is why he takes on human form, lives a life we can't live, dies a death we can't afford to die, to give us a heaven we actually don't deserve to have. And he is, as a man, representative of all of humanity, as Adam was in one sense. Does he die for aliens if they look fundamentally different than us, if they're a different kind of life form altogether? And Jesus rose bodily as a human being. What does that say? Did Jesus really die for those creatures as well? And how can he be their representative if he's just our representative? And that makes God seem kind of parochial because he picked this one tiny blue dot kind of a thing. So that's kind of the challenge, is that there's more of a theological salvific problem. Who did Jesus really die for? And if aliens show up, then does that suggest that, well, we thought he died for us because, we needed to be special, and now we know we're not, so he didn't die for us or anybody for that matter. That's kind of where I think this goes a little bit. I don't know. I'd love both of you guys to get some reaction on that, what you guys think are some of the issues. But
I think it's wonderful things to think about. It's great. It's great for speculation. I mean, the Bible did say God is obviously super creative, but since it doesn't say anything else, that's where really all I could do is just speculate.
Yeah.
So just like you did, my thoughts just run along the same lines you did. All of those are different things to think about, but I don't really see any biblical commitment either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say the same. I mean, the Bible contains the most important things for us. It doesn't contain everything there is to know. There could be things out there that we don't know about. And I've always kind of taken the, his whole incarnation, death on the cross, it had a restorative impact universally, I think. This was even something talked about in the 2nd century a lot by Irenaeus, who talked about my buddy.
He keeps coming back up.
But he talked about recapitulation and those ideas and the sort of restoration of not just human beings, but of all things, of all creation. Somehow all of this will be remade. What does that mean? We don't know precisely, but that it will be good. And so it radiates out, just like how Adam's sin affected more than just humanity.
Yeah.
What Christ did on the cross, and just in his life too, because the incarnation is a part of this, and the ascension and all those things. Yeah. Sort of radiates out past just human salvation as well.
Well, you have this picture in Revelation of the wolf lying down with the lamb.
Right.
Wolves kill lambs, and they don't. And so there is this sort of redemptive understanding of what happens after the new heavens and the new earth are established, is where things that were at once at odds are no longer at odds, even beyond the human realm. Whether that's merely figurative or totally literal, the point is that these contradictory things, or redemption, permeates all of creation itself. And one could think, again, and back to your point, Scott, a lot of this can be speculative. And because, I have this rule, and you've heard me say it a lot, and I got it from somebody else, where the Bible does not speak, I very carefully keep myself from shouting. And one of those areas is this area. And it could very well be that if there were sentient beings, corporeal, physical beings that came from another world and got their way here and then introduced themselves to us, hopefully politely, isn't it possible that Jesus dies for sentient beings, sentient corporeal beings, we being an example of which. Now, I think that there's some problems with that too, but that's the whole point with speculation is I can't think through all the permutations because it's not unbiblical, it's just non-biblical. And so I can't tell you that I think that that's actually accurate or not. So the point is, we don't have to like despair that if there is a disclosure day, if Steven Spielberg's film is right, and this, by the way, I mean, I'd love to hear your take on this, Scott. What we got declassified does not qualify to the Hollywood level of a disclosure day. Kind of a thing where like, oh my goodness, we have to look around. This is it. It's over. I mean, that meeting, which was overhyped as being not really what they said it was, but also the kind of information we got wasn't that. But I'm not too worried about it, even as it stands now. So
No,
anyway.
I'm not surprised if we did have an actual thing like that. And you'll see why I think that.
Okay.
So that kind of leads us towards, whoa, is he thinking there are aliens or not? You'll see. But what I think the thing is, you guys hit it great. This is speculation, which is fun to do, but we have enough to worry about here in our own lives. Because I think the Bible, I like the acronym, basic instructions before leaving Earth. You know, when someone asks, well, why would God just create us just and confine us? Because one of the astrophysicists said this. Why is he going to it looks like we're just confined to the little cradle of Earth. Why are we confined here? And my answer is, what do you confine to cradles? Babies.
Yeah.
You need to we as humans might need boundaries. We can barely handle things well enough here before even thinking about expanding outwards. Like, for example, that first picture, we can put all our money, we can put billions of dollars into the search for extraterrestrial life, or we could put it in something more close to home. This picture has stuck in my head for so long because it's just such a horrible example of need here, and someone who's a little bit healthier, a little bit stronger takes away, because that bag was in that kid's hand. And I feel like we'd be doing that. There's a lot of things we could be putting billions of dollars towards here. Second thing, Encyclopedia Galactica. What was Carl Sagan hoping for? Something with an advanced understanding of how maybe we should live. I don't know why he didn't consider the Bible. Not only is the Bible that, but the Bible has evidence that it actually has scientific knowledge beyond human capacity, where no other source has that. And as far as looking as God, you can look at God as a bully if you want to, but there's another side of it. What if he actually loves and values you? And if you want to really explore some awesome stuff, don't you think the creator of the universe could take us to better places than Mars and Alpha Centauri? So there's just the problem with aliens, the danger is it could steer our thinking in what I think are investing in wrong directions and missing the most important investments, which Christianity spells out pretty clearly in the Bible.
This is, by the way, let me just pause for a second here. This is just interesting because oftentimes a lot of critics of religion in general, maybe Christianity in specific, will say that because we're so invested in a hereafter that we lose sight of that this life matters, which is of course not at all what the Bible teaches. It teaches a both and, is that there is a hereafter to come and there will be no more death and no more tears. But we're supposed to work in this life now for the kingdom of God on earth and do God's will on earth as it is in heaven. So there is no separation, but there's oftentimes this caricature of Christianity as being that. And what you're pointing out, Scott, is that if we have our eyes skyward and starward a little too much, and we have our hopes in these kind of things, that we can forget that there's work to do here.
Yeah. I mean, would we really want to invite a guest over to Earth the way we've kept this house, as it is right now? I think we'd want to tidy up a bit first before we start entertaining.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, why don't we jump into some of your thoughts on this and what you've presented on this before, of sort of the evidence for and against alien life, and just what we've learned from exploring the universe, and just sort of start to jump into that, because and even because there's some interesting cultural phenomenons that come along that I like to get weird.
Yeah.
I like to let the Bible be weird, and all. So I know we're going to get into some of the biblical stuff too. But I have this friend who I trust. More my wife's friend, but we're mutual. We're friends now too. Who I trust, very honest person. She loves people. Her whole career is helping people. But also, she claims she's been abducted by aliens several times. Otherwise, extremely rational person. So, what is it? Is it a night terror? Is it is it one of those things? There are all those questions to go into. But I bet there would be. I noticed when you have these conversations, and Michael Heiser was great at this because he actually engaged these conversations and got kind of a following from just taking people's questions seriously, whereas other people, when they hear about aliens, they kind of scoff. But how do we make sense of, are all of these people lying about what they've seen in the sky or what they've seen coming into their room?
Right.
Or is there something else going on? Is it demonic? There are all these questions that Christians have. And I do think even as these files are released, there's no smoking gun. There's no smoking gun of, we have this alien life form. It's been dissected and all this. But you are seeing a lot of documents where, government officials, Air Force people, whatever, that they are seeing these strange anomalies that don't seem to make sense. Like in the 40s, even back to the 40s. I know I sent you one where it's like, we don't know how this aircraft is moving like this. No one has this technology. And I think our Air Force went to Sweden and asked, do you know anything about this? And they said, yeah, our scientists just concluded it has to be aliens. Like that was back then. Of course, it's top secret. They're not saying that. Some governments think that aliens are already around.
Right.
So there's something going on, and it's going to challenge some people. So I'm interested in hearing, okay, but let's strip away what we want to have happen. Let's strip away the Hollywood imagination. Let's strip away jumping to conclusions that maybe we don't need to jump to.
Yeah.
What do we know? What don't we know?
Yeah.
And Scott's a great guy to lead us down that path.
We'll get back to the show in just a second, but I wanted to tell you about my latest book, Fake ID, How AI and Identity Ideology Are Collapsing Reality and What to Do About It. This is the most urgent book I've ever written about. Now, to tell you a little bit about the book, here's a short trailer. Something is deeply wrong, and we can all feel it. Culture tells us we're nothing but machines. It also tells us we're gods who can reshape reality by sheer will. Both can't be true, so it creates a kind of cultural schizophrenia where we can no longer tell what's authentic from what's artificial, and it's collapsing reality itself. But we're not machines to upgrade. We're not gods whose bodies are playthings or prisons. What we are is something the world is forgetting, but desperately needs to remember. Because only the truth about what we are can restore our sense of what's real. Okay, let's get back to the show.
So it is an emotional topic, not as emotional as pain and suffering in the world, but it's an emotional topic, surprisingly. So you're going to get some pretty people enjoy their speculation more than looking at what the actual facts are.
Yeah.
So it's really helpful to have people just approach it the way you do anything else in life where you got to make a choice. You have your different hypotheses of what you think it could be. Is it just explainable phenomenon? Is it actual aliens? That'd be the extraterrestrial hypothesis, the ETH. Is it something else? So you have your hypotheses, then you start gathering the evidence and analyzing it, because there's some really good reasons. You can see why a lot of people believe in it. In fact, more than half right now believe that there are intelligent aliens. And with scientists too. If you go to the astrobiologists, who have a little bit of bias there, but also just scientists in general, most of them believe there's intelligence. About 80% believe there's some type of life, simple life, and about just over half think that there's intelligent life.
Yeah.
Through a few different polls are saying pretty much the same thing, and that's increasing actually. So there are good reasons leading people to think that, but there's also really good reasons against it. And so if you want, I can tackle like the top 4 reasons kind of go together.
Yeah.
So we can talk about those, but then also at the same time show the evidence against them.
Yeah, let's do it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So I think one of the most used reasons that scientists will bring up, well, this combined with some others, is the Drake equation. So Francis Drake, he was I think he organized the first SETI, search for extraterrestrial intelligence. He started the first conference, and during that conference he was given a talk, and I think what he was trying to do was trying to find factors of where we should look to best hope to find life elsewhere. But then he realized, well, with all these factors, we can actually maybe get a number. How many ancient, advanced alien civilizations are out there in our galaxy? So each of these factors, N there is the number of alien civilizations with the potential to contact us. And then there's the factors, like R is the rate of star formation. So how many stars are we getting? Then you have other factors saying how many of these stars will have planets. Then you have factors like NE is how many of these planets are Earth-like. And then how many of these planets will have life? And then all the way you get to that L factor, that is, what is the length of time an advanced alien civilization can exist and possibly send some kind of radio contact with us, some kind of contact with us. So when you multiply all these factors together, he came up with a number. And I think initially at the conference, they said anywhere between 2 and 50 million civilizations just in our galaxy. I think later Drake came up with himself about 1 million. And he came up with 10,000 just in our galaxy. Carl Sagan wrote a book with another author, Schlotsky or something. And in their book, they calculated 1 million civilizations. And he repeated that on his Cosmos show.
Yeah.
But you can kind of treat this like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with, in rap, they have these diss tracks where different rap artists go at each other.
Yeah, we do it frequently to each other. Yeah. Yeah.
What's that?
We do it all the time in the office to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you rhyme it, then I'd be really impressed.
Yeah.
So here's a little clip that I used with the students, and they loved it when I said this, because you can take the reasons for believing in aliens and line by line show why these are also reasons not to believe in aliens.
Okay.
For example, the Drake equation is sung by a lot of scientists, and they get this euphoria that there's going to be so many, we have proof that there's so many civilizations. But as Kendrick Lamar would say, they need to sit down and be humble because they are not using this equation correctly.
Okay.
In fact, usually when I present the Drake equation, I use a little line from Kendrick Lamar's song and say, there's a minor problem with the Drake equation.
Oh boy.
Here's one of the problems. Well, first, let me give you just a little bit more about why people believe there is life so much. This is, when I was debating someone at University of Michigan, they were saying, the universe is so huge, why would God make it just specifically for us? And I helped make his argument a little bit better even. So if you look up at a night sky and you hold up your little pinky finger, the region of space covered by your fingernail on that little finger, if you had the best telescopes, you could enlarge it and then computer color it, you'd get the picture you have here. Those aren't stars. Almost all of those are galaxies with a couple 100 billion stars in them.
Hmm.
There is, let me see how many there. I think it was 300 sextillion planets. That's about 30 billion trillion. I think that's
Wow.
what it was. There is a whole lot of abundance of planets out there.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see, and they use that Copernican principle that you brought up. That whole idea was, at the time, it wasn't just the Catholic Church. It was everyone believed what Aristotle was saying, that everything revolves around the Earth. We're at the center. We're fixed. We're not moving. But Copernicus and others, Galileo and others, they basically had said, no, the Earth is actually revolving around the sun. And so they said, we're just mediocre. It's called the mediocrity principle. We're nothing special. So if we're nothing special and we have life, it's got to be elsewhere. And the scientists said, well, yeah, there's a lot of planets that are going to be in what they call the water habitable zone. Here's an example of that. So what they're saying is, depending on the type of star you have for a planet, you have to be the right distance from that star. Too much or too little, and you can't have water. And the Earth is in the just right zone, the Goldilocks zone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the water habitable zone. But now I'm going to start getting to the problems with these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
The scientists aren't telling us everything. The universe is not like a chia pet, where you just add water and you get life.
Yeah.
This water habitable zone is just one that the planets have to get right. And as of 2019, there were 11. And note, here's one right here. You also have to be the right distance from the sun in order to have the right amount of UV. So it's a UV habitable zone. In this picture, that fuchsia color is the graph basically shows the distance from a star, and the bottom, the horizontal axis, is the mass or the type of the star.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the type of star you have, that fuchsia zone is where a planet would be safe. And now the green zone is where it would be safe for water. Notice the only place a planet could have both is where they both intersect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just 11. There are 14 of these zones that a planet would have to fit all within, which is why current scientists who are actually bringing the data are saying things like this. As far as we know, Earth is the only planet in the universe that could sustain human life. There's countless other instances of conditions in our planet's history so improbably perfect that life itself, even on a single planet, only seems possible because we're experiencing it. So here is I just watched something from the Royal Institution where they had some astronomers on there, and they came up with a super optimistic view. Now, we probably got 150 civilizations where we're at right now. Now, remember, it started off at like 2 to 50 million, and then Drake said about 10,000. Sagan and his co-author said about 1 million. Well, since that time, Carl Sagan's co-author wrote another book that it's entitled We Are Alone. And he says there is zero chance that there's another planet in the universe that's going to have any kind of life. Now, with this optimistic one from the Royal Institution meeting, that was kind of recent. They said 150. Now, I want you to look at something. Do you see this L value, how massive it is?
Yeah.
And the other ones are kind of small.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on the L value you pick, it completely dominates the equation.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you look in the literature, there are the scientific guesses are 100 million different between each other. So this one value can dominate and make you think you have 150 possible planets with life. You want to be a little bit more realistic? Mike Strauss, he's a physicist. He brought in a little bit more realistic numbers, and I don't even think these are realistic. I mean, that L value, do we really think an alien civilization is going to last 10 million years? 10 million years of broadcasting to us technology. Do you think humanity is going to last 10 million years with the ability to reach other civilizations?
So just to remind us, that L value is the estimation of how long any one of these civilizations will have lasted in order to advance to the point where they could send us either radio signals or some kind of a signal to get to us in the first place, so that we will be aware of their existence, let alone actually get here, right? So that's what that L value is. Okay.
And if you want something that's more scientific,
Mm-hmm.
here's the bottom line. You don't just have 8 parameters that have to be just right. There are dozens and dozens of parameters. Hugh Ross, astrophysicist who's gone around to all the top universities in the country.
Mm-hmm.
You've had him on your show before.
Absolutely, yeah.
He's done the best work I've seen on this.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a lot of my resources even from his work.
Mm-hmm.
And he's tested these numbers. Well, first of all, the probabilities that he brought up come from the scientific literature, not written by Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are atheist and agnostic scientists.
Mm-hmm.
And the probability that you get complex life on any planet is 1 chance in 10 to the negative 176th power. Now, this all sounds very, you might get lost in the numbers. Let me just break it down very easy. We have about 10 to the 80 atoms in the universe. If every atom in the universe was a planet with a chance of getting it right, we would still only have 1 chance in 10 to the negative 96. That is scientific zero. There's no chance.
Oh, wow.
Even if, and I've used this before, even if every atom in the universe spawned off a new let's just say every second since the beginning of the universe, about 10 to the 17th seconds, a new universe spawned off of us that also had 10 to the 80th atoms. If you took all those planets, what is the chance that any one of them could meet all of these factors necessary to have complex life? You'd only have 1 chance in a trillion, which translates to no chance at all.
One of the reasons behind that
won the Mega Millions Lotto.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, someone's going to win. That's not too surprising. But let's say that same person got greedy, and the next time it rose up really high, they bought one more ticket and they won again. And let's say they did that 10 times in a row. What are you thinking? Wow, how lucky?
Right.
Nah, you're like, something's going on behind this.
Yeah.
The universe would have a lot better likelihood of winning the lotto 10 times in a row than doing what it did to get life on this planet.
Our friend Dan Barker might try to insert a contradiction in there. I just debated Dan Barker, and he invented this word contradiction to basically, it's the weak anthropic principle, that you would expect to see. Oh, like, yeah, okay. So there's a life-permitting universe. Well, the chances of that are basically 1, because here we are to observe it, kind of a thing. And but we haven't observed the alien life yet, so that his contradiction wouldn't actually work in this particular instance. But Scott, walk me through the math here just 1 second, so I should make sure everybody understands it. When you have all of these factors, in order to meet any one of these factors, and because they're essentially based, if I'm not mistaken, on probabilities, you have to multiply the probabilities. And the more times you multiply a probability, but the way probability math actually works out, the probability gets lower the more you multiply it, right?
Right. So what this is saying is every one of these factors. So let's say the number of planets that are supposed to be Earth-like in our galaxy, they're saying it'll be 1 out of every 100,000. They're saying here. That's that 0.00001. It's this one right here.
Yep.
So if 1 out of every 100,000 planets is Earth going to be Earth-like? That's still only 1 out of 100,000. But now, how many of those planets are going to have be able to have our kind of life? That's the one below it. That's another 1 out of 100,000 again. So now the likelihood is not just 1 out of 100,000, it's 1 out of 100,000 times 1 out of 100,000. Mm-hmm. So it's vastly lower.
Right. And because you're multiplying numbers that are less than 1, you're never going to get an additive property to it. If you multiply 2 times 3, you get 6. And the reason is because 2 and 3 are bigger than 1. But if you start multiplying numbers that are smaller than 1, the numbers actually get smaller, not bigger. And that's counterintuitive to the way we think of multiplication. But when you're multiplying things lower than 1, you're multiplying times things. So if you multiply 2 times 0.5, you don't get 2.5, you get 1.
Yeah. So it goes lower. And when you can see this last number here, 1 in 10 to the 96th, what that is really saying is you have one chance in, you know how you'd say you got like one chance in 100 to be 1 over 100 as a fraction? This one is saying it's 1 over, not 100, which is 1 with 2 zeros, but 1 over 1 with 96 zeros.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's as close to absolute zero as you can get. So chance has no chance.
Right.
Is what it's saying.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah. That's well said. Dan Barker's that there's several problems with that. There's when you say we have life here, that's not a pattern. That's one instance.
That's true. Yeah. That's a good point.
So that's selection bias. You can't make any judgment from that. And his whole idea of what's our chance of getting this 1 out of 1, he's not doing it the way scientists do it. Scientists, they go before the universe happened and ask, they use something called phase space. What they're saying is, out of all the possibilities of how our universe could come to be, let's say each possibility is a marble. And let's say we have 100 million marbles in that bag and one of them is green. That means that only in that condition could there be life in the universe. So then that would be 1 out of 100 million in phase space. So out of all the phase space, out of all the possibilities, only one of those could have life. So it's not a 1 out of 1 chance that we're going to have life here. No. It was, you got to go before the universe started, and then you have one chance in whatever the phase space was. And that number is monstrous.
I gotcha. Okay, so obviously it's very little to no chance that there would be intelligent life that would be capable of reaching here. Given all those factors, only some of which are in that grid, there's actually now more than that. So we've established that the probability of there being alien life that could ever reach here or contact us is essentially 0.
Yes.
So that's an argument against in light of the argument for. So, yeah.
So the argument for would be the universe is so vast. Let me get back to, the argument for it would be the universe is with the Drake equation, a lot of scientists were thinking there's going to be a lot of opportunity for life to exist. And there's so many planets. I mean, this universe is so far bigger than we can imagine. There's so many chances. And, life happened here. But when you look at the actual numbers, if you do the Drake equation correctly, there's really no chance that another planet's going to have, even with all the planets we have, there's no chance it's going to happen. So out of what we have so far, we're not a mediocre planet. We are unfathomably unique in the ability to have life. From this point, we could either go into, even if there was life, let's just say at the nearest star or at the nearest galaxy, the likelihood that they would get here, even if they did exist, it's unfathomably difficult. It's the movies just they make it look so easy, but if you look at what it would take for for what it takes for space travel. I mean, when you think about it, watch what was that movie with Tom Hanks in it, where it was oh, it was one of the missions where they were in a capsule and it they had a malfunction
Apollo
and they said,
13?
Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah, Apollo 13.
Okay, yeah. So think about that. All the most brilliant minds, equipment, and everything struggle just to keep people alive for so many days in a capsule. But now you have to have a planet that can keep diverse life alive for all the years that the Earth has. That's quite a challenge.
Yeah.
When our best minds can barely do that. So people do not realize how crazy difficult. When you see a SpaceX rocket come back to its platform, I mean, it blows your mind. You're like, oh, we can do anything. But when you look at the science behind it, you start to realize there's no way we're going anywhere.
Hmm.
So if you want, we could look into the difficulty of space travel. Let's see, or we can start looking at the UFO phenomenon itself.
Well, I have a question because I've been thinking about this for a while. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. On this is that, that there's that L factor, which is how long that life would have to exist in order to have the chance to be able to contact us in the first place. Let's assume just for a moment that the evolutionary hypothesis is right. And here we are on this planet, and we have evolved over a course of time to the point where we're here now. As is probably pretty well known, I'm pretty skeptical of the evolutionary hypothesis, but let's just assume for a moment that it's actually true. And it took us all this time to evolve to the point where we're at now. Given the age of the universe, 13.5 billion years old, or depending on who you ask, but roughly 13.5 billion. What gives us any reason? Is there any argument from the sort of pro-alien life forms could get here people to believe that evolution anywhere else in the universe could have accelerated faster than it did here on the order of magnitude it would require since the beginning of the universe for life not only to evolve at all, but for life to evolve to the point where it was so much more advanced than us that it is not like 100,000 years ahead. It's so many years ahead that it actually figured out a way to create wormholes or whatever it is to get here. Is there any argument? Am I missing something in saying it seems to me that you have to ad hoc believe that evolution would be accelerated elsewhere at such a fast rate that those beings would be so much more advanced than us that they could get across? Not only could they get here, but they'd have to find us in the first place, given the sheer number of planets they'd have to search in the universe anyway. If you're watching this and enjoying the conversation, we would love for you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so that you don't miss future episodes. Now, believe it or not, about 90% of the people who watch our videos aren't subscribed. And if just a fraction of you hit that button, it would make a big impact. This is one simple, totally free way to support our ministry and help others discover thoughtful Christian content in a culture that's full of conflict and that's searching for meaning. So go ahead, subscribe, like, and share. It really does help us out. And now back to the show.
Well, there's a lot of physical limits involved. So people think that, okay, if the universe is 13.8 billion, all right, but life, you can't just get even a planet started until a whole bunch of stuff happens. The universe has to expand, cool, and it has to start creating the elements. Because at the time, when the universe began, it would only have like hydrogen and some helium, maybe some lithium. You need some super giant stars to cook up, live their whole life, and then blow their guts out, which is the heavier elements, before you can even start to have planets. So you don't start, planets aren't even possible for the first good chunk of time in the universe. And then an argument for, and again, evolution to me just isn't scientifically possible without an intelligent agent working on it. So aside from that, things did evolve massively quickly if they did, because the through the time periods of the Earth, there was a lot of times where we had meteor bombardments that wiped out almost all the life, and then in a relatively quick time, you have not only new life taken over the planet, but new body forms different from before.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you can try to argue that from an evolutionary standpoint, but that's why they have arguments between natural selection, acting on mutation versus the hopeful monsters. The idea that this punctuated stuff just boom, new changes. They argue that because they have to explain, how does life arise so quick? Well, Christians just say any kind of new designs in that is coming from a mind.
Yeah.
Right. New information comes from a mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's any way to get around the fact that you could have evolution happen in an instant. If we watched evolution happen non-life to life right in front of our face and in a petri dish, and evolution happens within 5 minutes, that's still not going to matter, because based on the numbers, science and math are telling us there isn't any other planets capable of supporting life.
Mm-hmm.
And even if there was, there's no way they're going to make it here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The travel restrictions are amazing. One of them I could just touch on briefly. If you want to travel at even getting anywhere near speed of light, Richard Dean, research scientist, came up with this. Here's the formula of how you figure out what would happen if you collide with something. So let's say you're traveling, at really super fast speeds that you'd need to get anywhere. So your trip to the nearest galaxy doesn't take 2.5 million years to get there, even by light speed. So you can calculate what would happen, and even Francis Drake himself did this calculation. If your spaceship hits something in space that is only 1 gram, you have a nuclear explosion going through your ship.
Okay.
Also, if you're traveling at those kind of speeds, I love the Star Wars and Star Trek when they're flying through space.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a beautiful thing. The problem is that light radiation,
mm-hmm.
when you start going at that kind of speeds, it gets compressed. You know the Doppler effect with sound? When something comes close to you, the sound changes. It goes,
yeah.
That's the Doppler effect with sound. The sound waves are getting compressed as they come towards you, so it changes the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Light does the same thing. You start traveling as fast as you need to, that light turns into radiation that we use at our cancer center to cure cancer, and it could also kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole warp drive thing,
mm-hmm.
it's theoretical. It works when you're using Einstein's equations. It works theoretically. In real life, there's all kinds of problems.
Mm.
The kind of energy you'd have to harness to make that happen, there's not enough energy on this planet and the sun combined.
Mm.
Also, you better not invite your parents to come meet you, because when you come to a stop, you shed a whole bunch of radiation out forward and destroy everything that's in front of you.
Mm.
And if you're going at those kind of speeds, I think you'd have a 25 billion mile turning radius in order to try to turn. And to stop, I think it was something like 12 billion miles to stop.
Mm-hmm.
So
wow.
The problems we face and the energy it takes to do it's astronomical problems that it's not that it's not that we're trying to downplay the awesome imagination, but imagination runs into real physical natural law limits.
Mm-hmm.
So we are limited by natural laws.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess I think the follow up then would be what are people seeing? What are the government agencies seeing? What is the UFO phenomenon then? Because it seems, I mean, what you've laid out, you've been pretty open about. Yeah, beings could exist, but it's highly improbable. One, it's difficult to exist. Two, it's difficult to travel through space. So what is the phenomenon that people are seeing? I mean, we can talk about people seeing UFOs, people feeling like they've been abducted or otherwise interfered with. What do you think is going on with those?
So you said you had a friend that had an experience.
Right. Yeah. Several.
I did
Yeah.
too. An engineer. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna. Yeah, several experiences. Yep.
Ah, okay. So I also have a friend. He's an engineer. He's not prone to making up stuff, and he is absolutely convinced he saw a UFO
Mhm.
that was intelligently guided.
Hmm.
Now, when I first started hearing people make claims about UFOs, my first thought was to just say it's natural phenomenon. It's in your head. It's nothing. But I don't think that's fair, and I don't think it's reasonable. I
Hmm.
think people really have seen things because there's way too many testimonies and way too many good testimonies. And when they've done research on some, the government's done a lot of studies. I have the names of them written down somewhere, but there's a number of government studies, and they ended up so science wise, they're only going to give you a few options of what they think scientifically. They'll say, it's explainable. We just haven't figured it out. It's different condition in the person and so on. Um, but when you like the most recent military video where they said it got hit by a missile and it just kept going, and
Oh
there's
yeah.
some neat things like that. There's also the abduction stories. I guess we can get into that in a minute. But so the UFOs, there, it's not fair to just dismiss people's testimonies, and it's also not fair to just say an unidentified flying object is really an alien flying object. They're called unidentified for a reason
Mhm.
because we don't have definitive proof yet. However, some of the evidence that they have is pretty stunning. Um, some of the studies that they have showed that these things can accelerate at, I'll have to look at that, unfathomable. I mean, they're accelerating at like a million G's. So G's, each G is a measure of force on us. Like gravity is 1 G. If you ever seen pilots or astronauts go through where they put them in something that spins to put a lot of pressure on them,
Mhm.
they can stand 4 to 6 G's only for a little bit.
Mhm.
But whatever are going in these UFOs, or now they're calling unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAP, I think it is.
Mhm.
They're going to, I can't remember the number, so you'll have to check into it. It was either thousands or million of G. They're also making right turns,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they're also appearing and disappearing.
Mhm.
And they're violating physical limits. And there's some good evidence that they have on video, testimonies, and other things, and the testimonies match others. So something is going on that would be violating natural laws. So that's a miracle.
Mhm.
Um, so again, I don't think it's fair to dismiss testimony. There is some good evidence that there are some real things happening, real phenomenon. It's not just in people's heads. But also, we don't want to just jump right to aliens because there's other possibilities.
Mhm.
Um, I'll show you one slide that's funny, and then one slide that's actually more telling. So here's a study. There is a UFO reporting center, and they've been keeping data for a while. And there is just, I'm sure by now there's millions of sightings and things that they have. So here is a graph that was made. I think Richard Dean made this taken from the National UFO Reporting Center. Oh yes, it was him because he also had this overlay. So to me, that's funny. And the stats do say something interesting, though. They do say that at 3 a.m., you are 10 times more likely to see a UFO than at, let's say, 6 a.m. or 8 p.m. Other times where it's dark, where there's a lot more people outside, for some reason, it's 10 times more often at 3 a.m. Mm-hmm. Now, I am not saying this to claim it has anything to do with inebriation. I did this one just for more fun. But you can analyze the data and some really even more bizarre things come out. Now, this is what I mean between too many people are just approaching aliens with speculation. The most common thing I hear is there just has to be more out there. Mm-hmm. That's a problem. On something that's actually impacting us with our global investment and could possibly impact beliefs, you got to put a little bit more time into it. We do have enough data for some analysis, and you can test the different theories. So one of the theories is the extraterrestrial hypothesis, ETH. Mm-hmm. Another thing is it's just natural phenomenon, just some is unidentified. And I think what the studies have shown, the different government studies, I think they've identified 99% of the UFOs as identifiable natural stuff. But there's 1% that they call, I think it's residual UFOs, RUFOs, RUFOs. Mm-hmm. Those 1% they don't have an explanation for. Those are the things that are doing right turns in the air, appearing and disappearing, good evidence of it, and violating physical laws. So now that doesn't work with the natural hypotheses very well. It does work with the extraterrestrial hypothesis, but now a lot of researchers, and I have quotes from atheist and agnostic researchers, they're starting to have a new hypothesis. They call it ID, so interdimensional hypothesis. They're saying the things that they're finding are doing things that are outside of the physical laws of this universe. So they have to be a different dimension. Mm-hmm. And they seem to be purposeful. So they're talking about interdimensional beings. So that's the IDH, the interdimensional hypothesis.
Okay.
So there are ways you can test this.
That is a fascinating idea.
Yeah. So this is the continued thing that Richard Dean used. This is a correlation. He found UFO sightings have a direct correlation with the rise in lack of religious belief. In fact, when you do a Pearson's correlation and you end up getting a probability of what's the likelihood this is by chance, these are the numbers you get. And notice those are the states. So you see Washington up in the upper right. At the bottom left, you see Louisiana, Mississippi. What this shows is there's the UFO Reporting Center has data, but then there's also data like you can get from different polls and that on like church going, for example. How often people are going to church?
Yeah.
This graph shows a direct correlation between like church going is one of them, or just religious belief versus non-religious belief. Hugh Ross did another graph like this on occultism and found a direct linear relationship as well. So bottom line, the number 1.9 times 10 to the negative 10th, here's what this is saying. There is a direct correlation with UFO sightings, UFO phenomenon, and lack of religious belief. In fact, how good is that probability that they're correlated? It's a 1 in 20 billion chance that it's just by chance.
Oh, wow.
So if you have that p-value there, if it's less than 0.05, anything lower number than 0.05, there's a significant relationship going on. This number is so far below it, it's basically saying there's an absolute correlation between lack of religious belief and UFO phenomenon. So here's a couple people that have been studying the phenomenon, including especially the abduction phenomenon. So there's, you remember the Close Encounters of the Third Kind and those movies?
Of course.
They do rank it by encounters with supposed aliens on first kind, second kind, third kind, fourth kind. They've done studies on this. They've interviewed the witnesses, and they have a lot of data. So John Mack, Harvard psychiatrist, former professor of Harvard Medical School, Pulitzer Prize winning author, he's got a couple books on this. What he said is that abduction experiences involve aspects of reality you cannot explain with current science. It challenges the boundary between material and spiritual realms. Basically, what he was saying is the phenomenon that he saw not only in the UFOs but also in the abductions could not be fully explained by conventional psychiatry or physical models. His phrase was, it might involve non-ordinary reality.
That's a tepid way to say it.
Experiences had spiritual or transformative effects, and they weren't good.
Yeah.
They were universally negative, extremely negative, to the point there's been a number of people killing themselves after these repeated experiences. Another person, Joseph Jordan, he worked for NASA, but then he went into what they call MUFON. That's Mutual UFO Network. So these are people across the globe that are studying the UFO phenomena. And he was doing this out of South Korea. He ended up interviewing hundreds of people over, I think it was 20 years, 20, 30 years. And he has written testimonies from hundreds of people. And universally, they are negative experiences. They say there's something, even when it was just UFOs, some kind of interaction, seeing UFO, they said, he has a bunch of quotes where the people were saying, it wasn't a machine. I was interacting with something personal. And then some of those times they had messages where they interacted through actual communication in the mind or whatever. And in those cases, they touched on some philosophical beliefs, and they also brought up science. And the interesting thing was the science was above the level of what these people should know, but it wasn't always accurate.
Oh, okay.
So it was a lot of deception going on in a bunch of different ways. And the neatest thing, the most telling thing, because now we have another way to predict and test which of these hypotheses is right. Because right now, non-physical being does not fit the aliens that we think of. That's an interdimensional being. That fits what the Bible warns us about, though. The Bible says our battle, we're not fighting against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities in the heavenly realm. And we're supposed to test the spirits to see if they're from God or not. And it talks about demonic activity, what are angels and demons? They are interdimensional beings that can operate beyond the physical realm and do things that violate physical laws. So this interdimensional hypothesis fits with the biblical description. And what Joseph Jordan found, so he first approached this as a New Ager when he first started working for NASA and studying UFOs. Then he became an atheist. Then he became a Christian because some of the stuff he saw freaked him out. For example, he said it was well known in the UFO community that once you've been abducted, you can't stop it. And it repeatedly, the interesting thing is, the abductions and the UFO experiences happen to the same people. There's more likely that it'll happen to the same person repeatedly than a different person for the first time. Meaning, if you've never seen a UFO, it's much more likely your buddy who did before will see another 2, 3, 4 more times than you'll ever see one.
Yeah, got it. That makes sense.
And when the abductions happen, they're universally harmful. The people would have very traumatic responses. I could do a list of the psychological and physical, including physical damage that happened. And even in a lot of the cases, their animals were affected before they were. So their animals were aware something was wrong before they were. They were starting to freak out, and then the person was abducted. But the animals recovered faster.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was understood that universally you can't get out of an abduction until one day, Joseph Jordan, in one of his 600 interviews he was taking of the person that was abducted, the guy said, yeah, it only stopped when I was starting to call on Jesus. And he's like, what? And the guy said, he's like, yeah, I just started saying, Jesus save me, and then it stopped. And he said, and it hasn't come back.
Interesting.
Both of those were strikingly odd.
Yeah.
So he then started going to the conferences and asking other researchers. He'd ask them in their Q&A sessions, hey, did you ever have a abduction stop? And they'd always say no. But he said when he got them out of the public eye and was just talking to them at a bar afterwards, he said, okay, I actually had something where it stopped, and here's what happened. And then they would be honest and say, okay, we had the same experience. But ours didn't call on Jesus. They just started singing some church hymn. Or in every case, it had something to do with singing, praying, calling on the biblical God.
Wow.
So that is now testable. So Joseph Jordan did what any good scientist would do. He made that public, his findings, and then said, I want to see if this works for others. So other people contacted him, and he interacted with them who were having the repeated experience, because a lot of these people have the experience over and over. And he said, try this. And they have documented cases where it stopped when they tried that.
Oh, wow. So in other words, what you're pointing out here is that you have these interdimensional beings as opposed to purely extraterrestrial, something that could come from another planet that would be physical and subject to the laws of the universe. We're seeing phenomena that look like they're violating the laws of the universe in ways that, at least as far as we can tell, whether it's because of the limits of technology or because it's just theoretically even impossible to do the things they're doing, can't also actually be physical things. So they'd have to be interdimensional things, non-physical things.
Right.
Then couple that with the fact that the encounters they're having are negative and seem to ring with this spiritual aspect to them, and then they go away when there's a reliance on and calling out to the biblical God. It sounds an awful lot like the kind of thing you would expect if there were demonic activity as opposed to alien activity happening in these instances, given the evidence that we're seeing. So the fact that you can actually say, okay, if you want this to end, here's what you do, and then it does in fact end when you do that thing, is an indicator that that hypothesis is correct. That it's just not extraterrestrials. This is more interdimensional, and interdimensional meaning demonic or some kind of spiritual activity.
Yep. So not only, and the Bible also, it tells Christians you can have spiritual discernment. If you have the Holy Spirit, you have spiritual discernment. So this phenomenon is not happening to Christians at that level. But it's a direct correlation with non-religious people, and especially those in occult stuff that get into occult stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I want to pause though. I want to just sort of do a little, because we're big fans of steel manning. If someone were to say, "No, I've had an encounter, and I know it was with aliens because this is what happened," are there instances? Because you use the word universally, and I want to be careful, because sometimes when people say universally, as a lawyer, I used to prepare all my clients for depositions is never say never and never say always. And the reason is because if I can find one instance in which case it was the case, then your never was false. And if I can find one instance where it didn't happen, then your always is also false. So refrain from saying, and as a scientist, this probably even better than a lawyer would, is that using words like never, universally, and always is prone to having exceptions. So if someone were to say, and I don't know what your friend has had in terms of an encounter, Derek, is if they were to say they had a positive experience in some form or fashion, what would that do to the discussion? We'd say, well, it's clearly not demons because here we have someone who's had a positive experience. Now, I think I can come up with an answer. And one of those answers is that at first it's positive because they want you to like the encounter. They don't want to terrify you at first. They want to deceive you in this way. The problem, of course, I could see with the counter to the counter is that, well, now it becomes unfalsifiable. It's like, well, of course you found your way out of the issue because you're saying, oh, it's a pleasant experience, which still means it's demons. So if it's unpleasant, it's demons. If it's pleasant, it's demons. So, heads I win, tails you lose kind of a thing. What do you guys think about that? I don't know if there are encounters that are pleasant or positive or some kind of thing like that. I mean, I do hear and you see these books written by people who have encountered these supremely intelligent but also very benevolent beings, and they want to tell the world that we're not alone, and these people want these beings want our best interests to be realized. So there are accounts like that. I don't know if they fall within the realm of credibility. So is it that the universality of the negative experience happens with the most credible encounters? How does that work exactly?
So I'm really glad you brought that up because I do try to avoid those words wherever I can. I use them now because that's what the researchers who did this, those are the words they were using.
Okay.
They said they have never encountered something positive. Now, I have myself heard of positive encounters. Like there's channelers, people who are claiming there's religions built around this now.
Yeah.
And they claim exactly what you said. They said, no, it was enlightening. I felt peace and love. And of course, that is the best way to bring someone in is to first show that this is good for you. And then you start doing your damage. So I agree. I think that was really important that you brought it up because I can't imagine that it would be all negative. But when the main researchers, the guy, with the Harvard background, Pulitzer Prize winning author writes on it, saying that this is negative. It's horrible. And this other guy who spent his life doing all these testimonies, it seems to be really traumatic and bad. Now, what does it mean for the overall case of everything? Well, again, it's all about the same test that you do with any kind of theory to see which is better. All right, so the interdimensional hypothesis, the Bible made those predictions thousands of years ago that we're going to have those kind of interactions. And in fact, a woman who works for the Library of Congress, she researched everything on this UFO phenomenon, everything written on that, Library of Congress, and demonic possession. And she said they're the same. We're having the same kind of experiences. It's just you're changing the name between alien abduction versus demonic possession. So I think that's pretty telling evidence that you would predict if it's the interdimensional, plus violating physical laws.
Yeah.
And the alien experience, it doesn't really, you wouldn't really predict that. What if they had the technology to come here and abduct us and do things? They don't need to be nasty. They don't need to be nice. They are so far beyond us. We're ants to them. So I wouldn't predict any of this if it was aliens.
Well, one of the things that occurs to me is too, as we sort of bring this to, I want to sort of bring it to a head soon, is if it were the case, going back to the probability calculus you started off with, Scott, is that if there were this it's so improbable that they exist first, and that even if they did exist, that they could get here. What is the probability of two different kinds of alien life forms getting here? One with malevolent intent, to the point where it is the vast majority, if not the universal experience of malevolent intent, and these other people, these other beings that have our best interests at heart and exist as well and have this peace and lightning kind of thing. It seems to me that there must be something, in light of the math, you already have the high improbability of one of them getting here, let alone two different kinds with two different agendas, unless they simply have it's one set of beings that have diverse factions. One's malevolent, one's benevolent. I suppose you could have that, but it just seems to me that the probabilities are already astronomically small, that if you were to have two different, now you have to multiply that by 0.5 again and get an even smaller number. So, yeah.
Well, I find that, I just find this absolutely fascinating, obviously. And I even see in what Scott has depicted, especially with the growth in religious skepticism or just unbelief that happens in the aftermath of, even within the Bible, that tends to be the focus of demons, to dissuade, even so. I take that supernatural worldview, that Michael Heiser type of worldview, and I know that this is one of those rare things that we actually do not disagree on, do not agree on.
I was like, well, what are you talking about?
We do disagree. that we don't agree on 100%. But I think even if you take that idea that demons fell and then convinced human beings in the ancient world that they were rival gods when they weren't, but they trick people into that. That's where you get idolatry. Paul talks about idols just being, being false gods, and that's some of the issue with eating meat sacrificed to them, is that it's either something fake or it's a false god. But that Genesis 6 idea, if the sons of God are in fact demons, which I think there's a strong case for. Other people do not, and it's nothing to break communion over. That they are actively trying to dissuade people from the true God, and they're doing it in a way that made sense for what would dissuade people back then, which was these rival gods who can promise you all of these good things, and just like Satan in the garden, stop being limited by what this God is trying to tell you can and can't do. Same thing later, in possibly in Genesis 6. But then in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, you see this rise of, well, now wouldn't that be the devil's greatest trick? To quote Van Helsing, is to convince people that God doesn't exist, or convince people that they don't exist. But now they show up as these, oh, look, they're just technologically advanced. I mean, it's like the demon's playbook for a scientific age, the age of modernism, the age of progress. And it plays into that, again, that Copernican principle, which for whatever reason makes us doubt God's existence because there might be something else out there. So just to comment that I find that fascinating, that if both of those things happen to be true that I've talked about, that they show up and in culturally appropriate ways find the thing that will lower people's confidence in the true God.
Couple that with Joseph Minnick's work. We've quoted him plenty of times here, but Bulwarks of Unbelief, the idea that we've hyper-technologized and also disenchanted the world, so that we are in a world where everything has to have some kind of naturalistic, mechanistic explanation. And so when we encounter something that should wow us and lead us toward the interdimensional demonic being explanation, we actually avoid that one because everything has to be explained naturally, which means it has to be aliens. And if there are aliens, then the Bible doesn't describe them. And if the Bible doesn't describe them, the Bible gets it wrong. And if the Bible gets it wrong, then maybe Jesus didn't die for humanity because humanity's not so special. What makes us so special? And so you can see this bulwark of unbelief where we hyper-technologize and over-naturalize every experience we have. And aliens are saying, to the culturally appropriate moment, well, now's a good time to sort of masquerade as these beings from other planets. which will lead to unbelief. We used to do it when people had ideas about other gods, but now we're going to do it based on the fact that there's other living beings in the world, the universe, I should say. So
it's interesting too, because they can't help but hurt people. Because you think the best thing they could do then to show they're advanced is like be nice to people, give them things, but they can't help. It's like the occult. People get into the occult, and at first it's like what Scott mentioned. Wow, it's great at first. It's all sort of kicks and giggles, but then eventually you get this transition to actually this dark power comes over you, and you start doing sort of increasingly strange. You can and there's a number of testimonies out there of people that
I know people that's happened. They mess with the Ouija board, and it's fun and games. And at first, no one believes it. It's more of a sort of a subconscious suggestion thing that everyone's. Then they start getting into it. Then things start to become hard to explain how this Ouija board knows the things that it knows, and then everyone's involving themselves in it. Then they start doing it alone, and before they know it, they have this special relationship with the spirit, and then suddenly that spirit turns on them. It happens all the time. So I think that this is and it's I've seen it commonly. People have said, I started into this and it ended in a dark place, and they were just thanking God that they got out of it at the right time. But some people don't.
Yeah,
some people don't. So
And I think the bottom line, I mean, the Bible doesn't commit us one way or another. And Aliens, it's a wonderful idea for some awesome movies. But there are some real questions as, are we going to invest that much into looking for something that isn't there? Or should we invest even more? Because if they are there, this is serious. We can get an answer to that. We don't have to speculate. You can test these hypotheses. And when one of them is making predictions that come to be accurate, that's given the answer. Science and math has already provided the answer. The article that I showed from those astrophysicists, they said, so there was a thing called the Fermi paradox. Enrico Fermi, Nobel Prize winner, he was at Los Alamos with some other physicists, and they started talking about flying saucers and alien life possibility, and the discussion went into lunch, and they were all saying, well, of course there's life out there. So Enrico Fermi said, where are they? Then where are they? If they're everywhere, where are they? The answer is science and math has already provided an answer that the title of that paper was Dissolves the Fermi Paradox. We know why we're not finding any, because mathematically the odds are just impossible that there is anything else. And a lot of people don't like that, but why get mad? Don't be mad at the messenger. This is just science and math talking, which our culture supposedly loves. So just enjoy it in the movies. But then the other side of it, if the IDH, the interdimensional hypothesis, is accurate, that fits it in with the same Bible that predicted things about the beginning and cause of the universe that no human could have gotten right. There's a comprehensive case of evidence supporting the Bible already. And that has an answer that can be not just one small step, but the greatest leap for mankind into the hands of that creator.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Well, I think that if I were to have sort of a closing argument and a final thought, having our expert witness on the stand, thank you, Mr. Symington. You may step down now, kind of a thing. But no, seriously though, thanks, Scott, for that. That was tremendous. Thanks for the graphs and for the information as well. I think that's super helpful, because the math really does lead somewhere. And what I think is interesting is that, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you might end up having a situation where the wind was taken out of your sails. Your balloon got a little deflated because you're excited about the government disclosures. And you look at the videos and you see something. I didn't see the things everybody else saw. They saw, oh my goodness, this is proof. A lot of people said we're underwhelmed by the disclosure and saying that's just not what I thought they were going to disclose. There's this weird star-shaped thing that looks kind of interesting, but there's also this shape next to it that looks kind of like a parachute, and maybe that's a completely explainable phenomenon. But even if it's not explainable, could it be some kind of non-human being? And the answer is, yeah, it could be. I don't think that those particular disclosures get you there, but let's say that they do. As we just heard, it could easily be a non-human being, and that human being being something supernatural, interdimensional. That shouldn't deflate your balloon. That shouldn't actually cause you in any sense to be disenchanted with the world, but have possibly even more enchanted with the world as it exists now, because what you have is not just this encounter with these beings for which there is no manual on how to deal with them. We're not sitting alone in some scared hovel thinking, my goodness, these beings that can go across the universe in a blink of an eye and find us could dissolve us just by the mere sheer force of their technology. We'd have no chance against them. Or there's a promise for advancement that is beyond human belief. And so we have this awe, either awe based in fear or awe based in promise and prosperity to come. You already actually have that. If they are in fact interdimensional beings, and let's say they are in fact malevolent, well, you have a manual that tells you how to deal with them. Not only did that manual predict their existence, but it tells you how to deal with them. And we've seen people who are able to deal with them by calling on the creator of this vast, glorious, beautiful, artistically done, impressively engineered universe. So the fact that these are not aliens, the improbability that this is aliens of an extraterrestrial source, ought not to deflate your sense of awe, but the fact that the Bible predicts it, that we can deal with it, and that we have a solution based on the one who is the ultimate promise of a world to come, where we don't have to rely on outside beings who have figured it out, but we rely on the fundamental being who has created all of this. That ought to give you awe. And so we can be more excited, not less excited, the more we discover and understand that the Bible's been right all along.
Yeah. And can I just add one thing?
Please do.
You mentioned a manual. If the aliens give you a manual that says to serve man, run away, it's not. It's a cookbook. It's a cookbook. I just wanted to clarify.
Yes. The great Rod Serling.
To be clear, the manual you're talking about is the Bible.
That's right. I didn't mention it by name.
I don't know if you. Yeah, I can't remember. But
yeah.
Just want to get that out of the way.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
you, viewers, for indulging me.
It's a very important clarification.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it. Scott, thanks again for joining us, brother. Looking forward to doing more work with you and speaking more on these topics. We actually have a conference coming up that Scott will be joining us on, which I can't wait for you to be here in Michigan as we do some work with young adults. And you're going to be speaking on the intersection of science and faith, as you do so well. So thanks for joining us, brother. Looking forward to more work in the future as an adjunct speaker with Embrace the Truth. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, the defense rests.